and showtime, right? We're live. So that means we get to chat about all the things that we're so excited about, but we only have 10, 15 minutes.
When we could talk about this topic for probably days, weeks,
We should
months.
book a month.
Yeah,
Let's book a
that'd be
month.
fun. Everybody
Retreat
else is
out
like,
in the
no,
wild.
not for us.
What if we left the internet behind and spoke about AI without AI listening into us? How about
Ooh,
that?
it's always listening. Don't you ever get those like, you say something about something, some
Mhm.
sort of business or organization, or like, have you seen that thing? And then suddenly it starts showing up all over your phone.
That's not a conspiracy. That's really what's happening.
It's really
Yeah,
happening.
it's
Yeah.
really what's happening. Yeah,
So you're not crazy if it's happening to you. It's happening to
it's
everyone.
happening to everybody. It's happening to everybody. And I'll give you a quick example. When you think about CAPTCHA, right? CAPTCHA, that one that tells you, look at the traffic lights here and tell me what you see on the traffic light. So that way it can verify that you're not a robot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there was a paper that was released by Google the other day, and it literally came out and said, that capture thing that you verified, the bridges and the red light, train track, and all these, you are actually training an AI system on how to identify. So majority of the time it was for your security purposes, and majority of the time it was also for the system to learn about how accurate it is about identifying what's a red light, what's a trail track, what's a bridge, what's a mountain, what's a fire hydrant.
Hmm.
Fire hydrant is the one that I get caught up in most of the time. They always send me the fire hydrant for some reason.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
always get caught up, like, I'm so analytical that, like, if one tiny
Yeah, right,
little
right,
speck of something is there, I'm like, "But
right.
is that block?"
That,
Like, that's part of the cross section. That's part
that's
of the
the
traffic light.
right, right. And I feel like a jaywalker just because I cannot identify the jaywalking.
Exactly. Interesting though that you talk about that, because I think that's like a great lead into the things that you and I have been talking about so much, Asif, and what we did on Monday. Let's talk about what we did on Monday. What did we
Tell me,
do?
tell me. I have a brain memory shortage at this point. Tell me what we did
So
on Monday.
Asif invited me to a forum, which was part of the Department of Air Force's Data Analytics and AI Forum. It's the first year this has happened, right? And so we didn't really know what to anticipate. Like, we decided to go ahead and put a proposal in for a topic that we both love so much, which is talking about AI and combining that with my background in IO psychology into design thinking and structure, how to structure an unstructured world out there in AI. So we just thought, like, we'll just propose it, and then we got accepted, which we were like, yay! And then we showed up and we weren't sure who or what or how many, and it was awesome. I mean, what do you think, Asif? Like, were you surprised about the turnout? Like, I was.
Well, I was actually surprised that the organizer actually came out and said, "We're so sorry that we put you in the room where people couldn't fit in."
I
People were
agree.
standing outside the door waiting and said, "All the other events are going on, but this is the only one that had people outside waiting to get in."
Yeah, and
I felt like I was important for a second.
I know. I only brought 20 copies. So we did our session was a 50-minute workshop, which we couldn't really fit into a workshop because we thought we would have a smaller participation audience. But it was called Mapping a Blueprint for Organizational Use of AI Design, Implementation, and Deployment. And it was a workshop focused on stakeholders, decision makers, and end users. So it was really targeted towards all people who might be involved in an AI decision making process or a process at all, within that. So we weren't sure, and so we only bought 20 copies, and then it was the most amazing opportunity to then ask people for their information and kind of gather data on who our audience was. And it was some amazing people in the room, some data scientists, there was Air Force representation, Space Force, Ernst and Young, Deloitte, like CACI, like MetroStar. I mean, the list goes on, right, Asif? So I
Yeah.
was so excited afterwards. I was like, we just were able to talk about something that isn't really usually talked about within the field of AI, which is the process. And what I love that you talk about, which is comfortably communicating AI to people. So I really
Mm.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was the main focus, right? That was the main mission. To how to get comfortable about, say, you're not comfortable with what you hear on news right now. Say what you hear about AI machine learning and how expensive it is. You're not comfortable with that yet, right? And then you also see some of those failures that are in AI world right now, where 83% that does deploy to, or 83% that gets started on developing AI, they're not able to finish the project, right? That they run into a lot of hurdles. So you're hearing lots of uncomfortable news just as much as you're hearing all the excitement about AI machine learning by, say, ChatGPT or Tesla cars, right? Yeah, it's like the shiny things on top of the mountain, but you're in the valley looking up, thinking like, oh my God, I have all these problems I don't know the answers to, and I'm very uncomfortable with how things are moving, how fast things are rapidly approaching. So,
Yeah, and there's a lot of fear, right? I think that's another part of this. It's like there's so much fear and there's so many rumors and discussions and things that are making people fearful of like their jobs and their, job security and what the workforce will look like. And I think one of the aspects that you talked about yesterday, and I hope that you're going to kind of bring it up here a little bit today, is the human in the loop part of your conversation. But that is such a critical point to this and stuff that we don't talk about, which is there has to be a human in every part
right,
of it, including the development, design, implementation, the maintenance, every part. So why?
maintenance is what's get left out, right?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
maintenance is where people think, oh, AI will just do it itself. Well, maintenance is the longest and largest piece of the whole life cycle, and the life cycle doesn't end until you drop that AI completely.
Yeah, well, then it's going to restart somewhere because now you have a gaping hole likely where that AI was filling in for you. So, that's the interest. Now, if you keep up with maintenance or you have ways to collaborate, communicate, have discussions about what other people are doing and maybe somehow, tie those things together, well, maybe that would be a different story. So, and that's another thing that we talked about on Monday in that forum was the collaborative piece of this too. So I really enjoyed that conversation. So, and there it is, like comfortably communicating AI machine learning. I wonder what people think when they read this or
Yeah,
hear
I
it.
would love to hear your feedback. So if you're watching this live, or if you're watching the pre-recorded version of this, I see Anuj dropped a comment there. So if you're watching this live, press a comment, or if you watch it pre-recorded, drop a comment, or send us a message. Let us know, what do you think about comfortably communicating AI machine learning requirement to anybody. It could be your child. Do you want to teach your child about AI machine learning? Trust me, you do, because they will deal with it just like we did with social networking since 2005 ish, right?
Yeah, they're the
Where
future.
they're the
Yeah.
future. They will have to interact with social media, but with AI. So if you haven't taught, if you haven't been taught about how social media works, now they're getting to the point where you have to teach them social media and AI. Come and talk to us. We
That's a little
want to
scary
make you
too,
feel
though.
comfortable, you know.
Yeah, no, like it's a little scary to think like, oh, I have to teach my kids about social media. Sometimes we just want to protect them from all of these things, but I think part of that is honestly getting them comfortable with like maybe getting comfortable together in this space, right? We
And
just
if
talked
you're
before this about Tinder and how like and all this like swipe left and right things, like how that's going to change in the future. So like do yourself and your children a favor and talk about these things.
and if you're an organization, I think you will appreciate the fact that you're not rebuilding anything. You're just taking in your old traditional systems that you have and bringing it up to a stage where it's adaptable. It doesn't cost as much to throw away your old legacy system and rebuild your system all over again, right? We want to change that. We don't want to have legacy systems anymore. We want to have a system that is adaptive and building on top of each other. So that way, every data point you see, you're able to connect. And as a business organization, you're able to adapt faster than, let's say, Blockbuster. I don't mean to say mean things about Blockbuster, but it's true. They had such a market for the time frame that they existed in, but they weren't able to adapt fast enough, right? Because you cannot have enough time to throw away your legacy system while you're maintaining the new system, right? You want to have that sort of visions about like, okay, if I bring in AI, how does that solve my infrastructure problem? How does it solve my business process problems, right? Well, I'll tell you first thing first you need is the same people that built your original infrastructure. They need to involve in these conversations about AI for the future purposes, right? So the people, the human in the loop concept, when you hear it, don't just think like, oh, the data scientist that will be involved in the process, he's the important human in the loop. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about everybody you can bring to the table, or at least afford to bring to the table, right? And have them engage in a conversation. Because if you are missing out on some expert opinion, as in that say person who knows your system very well, and you're not listening to what they have to say, we might run into some issues in the future that will be hard to address. And I'm not saying that just because I think that's what's happening. No, this is actually proven fact. You can look at what happened during COVID in 2020. People had to leave their retirement to come back and fix a system that was not working in 2020 because COVID happened, right? Some
Yeah.
disruption.
Exactly. And that was part of kind of what we talked about on Monday was creating this AI design plan and implementation around some sort of evidence-based approach. And so we talked through a design thinking approach.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that approach specifically, going through those constructual, like we took the framework of design thinking and we broke it down into the smaller pieces, which have large potential, implications. But for example, empathy being the first approach, you define, then you ideate, and then you prototype, and then you test. And what Asif just mentioned about like bringing those people that designed and all that back into the testing, it's, you have to ask yourself questions like what changes need to be made to the AI solution based on, feedback, not only from the users, but from the people who designed it in the first place. Because it's like telephone, right? Like the intent sometimes is this, but like what happens with like communication and like, maybe somebody, instead of, writing the word, we wrote my, and then that changes the entire potential output of this. And so it's important to bring those people to the table at every given point that you can, and really have a collaborative sharing, information sharing type of communication channel.
I think we got a lot of laughs out of that picture.
Yeah.
We had a dog and a muffin.
Yeah, I think it's in this presentation. Like you might, if you have the chance to scroll, but like Asif showed this hilarious picture of, a Chihuahua, I think is what they identified it as.
We couldn't identify. That was the first problem we had. Even as us, we couldn't identify what kind of dog it was. It was hard.
It was, and believe it or not, a muffin and the dog actually looked similar. So when you're training the AI, it's as simple as asking the right question, right? And Asif pointed that out. Asking it, is this a dog or a muffin, is different than saying, is this a dog? Yes or no. Is this a muffin? Yes or no. Right. And that's kind of where we were going to. As simple as those things can be, think about the implications on the outside of that. And so why that consistent communication thread needs to happen about, in everything.
I think the main thread is about communication. There's no ifs and buts or way around it. It has to be about communication, because if you look at the data processing that you're capable of today, you will have to find your data processing that you have today, what you will keep and what we will add, and how you will focus on one and multiply some and maybe subtract some, right? Because those are all data process that you no longer need. But that will have to come to the conversation of human in the loop. You bring in your subject matter expert, because as you go through the process, one thing you will realize as a business owner or a mom or a dad or whoever it is listening, the student, you'll learn a deeper perspective about what it is that you're doing on a daily basis. Where's your data coming from? How is your data being produced? And what sort of data do you need moving forward in the future? This is the human in the loop concept that we have to talk about, right? So even if you don't end up with machine learning, trust me, you want to go through this process to say, how do I learn more about myself? Is that you learn more about your organization, your daily activities, your business process, your worldview that you have, the geopolitics or just economy. Look at the data, right? And then say, how do I take that data and map that into the machine learning? So that way the machine learning can do this manual task that I just went through, right? So I think it's a very rewarding process. And once you get to that point of machine learning, you will start a dialogue about optimizing, right? How do I optimize the fact that, I have this machine learning capability outside of my organization, and now I want to adopt that outside organizational machine learning and add that to my business process? And how do I make my business process that much better using original data, new data, and optimize it to the point that I can do more with my time now because AI takes care of most of my tasks, right? Rather than me learning how to write ChatGPT, or rather than me writing an essay by myself, scratching my head over and over, I let the ChatGPT do a majority of the work, and I only take 10 minutes to write that essay because I put my creativity into that ChatGPT
Yep.
essay.
Your reflection. Yep.
Yep,
Exactly.
exactly. So I think optimizing will be your last step, but you have to go through all this process to learn more about yourself and how you would be interacting with the future of technologies, with your business process or your things that you have envisioned, right?
Yeah, and speaking of the optimization, part of that design thinking process is, what are the indicators of success, right? And I think that is really important. I mean, we're talking about from a business or organizational perspective, often indicators of success equate to some form or fashion of ROI, return on investment, right? And so ROI isn't always financial, as we know. It could be, better, more informed decision making. It could be something like, operational effectiveness. It could be something like, enhanced situational awareness. So really understanding, what your, we love KPIs, key performance indicators are from the beginning that, and during this process lead to your indicators of success, which then impact your ROI. So why does this matter for business? Because it impacts their bottom line. And because these are the things in the structure that we need to kind of, talk about behind this kind of unstructured, playground, if you will, of AI, which is super cool and exciting and fun, but also uncomfortable and scary and weird and like, all those things. So there is some good things into building that really solid evidence-based approach into this that I think any person that's listening can benefit from.
Yeah, to be or not to be, right? I think that'll
That's
be the
the
question.
question. Yes.
Ask good question, get good answers, I guess, right? I don't know. How does that work? But
Ask the
whatever
questions, hopefully get a better answer than maybe you would otherwise.
be curious, keep asking questions.
Yeah.
You will get to an eventual answer that will fit your need. And here's one of the things that I would definitely leave you with, right? And anybody who's listening to this live webinar, we hold live webinar every week. We don't know who participates until we get a comment like Anuj. Let us know that you're listening in and you like what we have to talk about, how it is that we can improve these conversations, right? So every week we tend to pick a different topic. I did real estate topic about machine learning. I did finance topic. Any topics that you are interested in, let me know. I'll more likely and gladly will present the industry with machine learning concepts, because all things can have data, and anything that has data in it could be done with machine learning. Right.
I love that. And then like allow me to like come in at times and like point out process perspectives of, what like where we can insert process into that, where we can insert, design thinking, where we can insert indicators of success or things like that into that process. So, no matter what organization, industry you are from, this can be something that we can, maybe potentially like help with or like help you learn about. So, and that's kind of where we wanted to go with our call to action, right? Asif?
Yeah.
Look,
Not
look.
feeling comfortable. If you're feeling uncomfortable about AI, machine learning, the process, or who you need to engage with, the people, what technology you want to develop, you're feeling uncomfortable, let us know. How can we teach you, and what it is that you can learn with us as we're learning? Because we're learning a lot. We are swamped with all these AI applications that are coming down the pipeline, and I feel bad for myself, but I also feel bad for people that have no idea what happens behind the hidden layer and the black box of AI machine learning. So it's very important. Let's learn together.
It is, yes. And so I guess with that being said, just as Asif has mentioned, please, reach out to either of us, both of us, contact us, let us, know if there's something. One of the things we talked about, like we're able to really customize a topic, a discussion, facilitate dialogue, even something like this, as simple as this, and getting people, that validation that they might need out there for maybe an approach they're taking or maybe an approach they want to take. We actually had somebody come to us on Monday and say that we validated his approach to an innovation cell that he created, which
Right.
I said that's actually probably the biggest one of them all, is to validate an approach for somebody, right? Because people are very siloed right now in their approaches to this because it's so new and it's a little bit like, treacherous waters out there. And so for us to be able to provide somebody that peace of mind was really, I think, to be honest, for me, the biggest win. And hopefully kind of put some validation, like, solidified that for us as far as what we're talking about to the larger community. So I don't know about you, Asif, what your biggest one was, but sure was mine. So
Uh, well, I was asked the question, what sort of first draft do you do? What sort of proof of concept do you want to target? What sort of MVP do you want to bring into the table so that way you can have more buy-in, so that way you can have the sustainability piece addressed over time, right? My thought is this: if you have the right people in the room, if you have enough people in the room, you will find a pain point that will target a process for you and automatically will get you to a technology, either be it the one that you get from Microsoft or you just build one in-house, right? Whichever the case is, you have many directions to go through, but once you get the people in the room, you'll be able to say, like, I don't care how big that proof of concept is, I'll get started with that small proof of concept, which is based on the people's feedback within my organization, and the people within my organizations are the one that feeding the process for the technology to develop. So that was my biggest takeaway, because that kind of is the bottom line of all the conversation, right? Like, how do you identify the process? How do you label it, as you can see on this picture, right? How do you make a decision on that? Well, guess what, folks? That's what machine learning does. It identifies, it labels, and it makes a decision. And guess who else does it? This brain that we have between our ears. It has to identify continuously about 30,000 decisions that in a day that we make is based off of the same process: identifying, labeling, and decision making. So if you do what you do, you are doing it just like you would do with machine learning. And why not make it known to everybody within your organization? So instead of being uncomfortable about AI machine learning, we are getting far more comfortable, because AI machine learning is very much the mirror that we can hold against ourselves and say, how would we like our machine learning to behave, and how we would like our machine learning to learn and scale itself over time.
And coming from a psychology background, you give your brain a break. Hello.
Great. Oh, I want to build lazy AI. That's what I want to build. One that works really hard but makes me lazy.
Is okay, that's the next goal, Asif. But for now,
Ciao,
thank you
everybody.
so much for joining, and keep in touch and let us know how we can help.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.